I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item is the adoption of the agenda.
I move to adopt the agenda as presented. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? 7-0. Public comment? First one will be Amanda Buffalo.
Yes, already. Can I take this off the top?
Yes,
Yes.
please do when you talk.
Okay.
For us elderly people that can't hear.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Amanda Buffalo, and I have an 8th grader at Chisholm. I would like to speak to you tonight on behalf of many parents at Chisholm that have concerns regarding the summit curriculum. I did have a chance to meet with Mr. Van Rankin last week, and I appreciate his time and willingness to listen to my concerns. One concern with summit is lack of teacher-to-student instruction. There's a lot of video instruction, which is fine to an extent. It should not be the sole method of instruction. If a student is not understanding the material, the majority of students are reporting to their parents they receive the following feedback from teachers. There are multiple resources on Canvas, or go to Summit, rewatch the video, and take notes. For example, a student submitted a project, and the feedback the student received was, "You still did not do this right. Do not resubmit until you fix." The student's parents emailed the teacher to get clarification, and asked the teacher to spend time helping the student understand. Their response that they received was, "We spent all last week discussing this, and there are several resources on Canvas. They will be watching another video on it today." Great, another video. Another concern is that teachers aren't recognizing or intervening when students are struggling. How many times does a student have to fail a power focus area before a teacher intervenes? 4, 6, 10? Because that's happening. Shouldn't teachers be tracking students' cognitive skill levels? If a student has a cognitive skill level of 49%, it didn't happen overnight. Shouldn't there be an intervention prior to reaching this point? I've never had any teachers reach out to me with concerns or suggest interventions unless I made contact with them first. The way Summit is structured, parents cannot see what their students' grades are until it's too late. Parents are relying on teachers to intervene and see that their kid is struggling and reach out to parents if needed. I don't feel like that's too much to ask. When students ask for feedback, depending on the teacher, there is sometimes a long delay in response from that teacher, sometimes a week or longer. There's very little communication between parents and teachers on student progress or lack thereof, as indicated by just about every parent being blindsided by their student's 9 weeks grade. Why is this happening? Yes, we want these kids to strive for independence, but they are in middle school. We should not be having college expectations from children who aren't even in high school yet. Finally, remote learning causes more issues with this already inept curriculum. These kids need face-to-face teacher-involved instruction. I'm seriously worried how this group of kids who have been forced to use Summit the past several years will succeed in high school and beyond. I've done research, and there's not strong evidence that this is a successful educational platform. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer White.
Thanks everybody for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Jennifer Wagner. I do have one student at South Green and one at Chisholm. I've also spoken with multiple concerned parents over the last couple of weeks. Tonight I'm asking that as you decide on whether our children stay remote or on-site, that you consider some of the detrimental effects of your decision. You're already aware that this is more than just a simple yes or no answer. Tonight I'm asking you to consider more than just the community COVID cases. It's not that simple. Research recently completed by the Mental Health America states that in September 2020, over 50% of 11 to 7-year-olds reported having thoughts of suicide or self-harm during the previous 2 weeks, and 70% said that the top reason was loneliness or isolation. This is terrifying, but it also tells us that as educators, they can make the difference. Suicide is also the leading cause of death in Kansas between the ages of 10 and 44, not COVID. To improve mental health for our youth, they must maintain friendships, cultivate hobbies, decrease screen time, avoid isolation, and just be checked on. These are things that are being taken away from them. When suicide and depression is more prevalent than COVID, does it make sense to continue educating them online? I can guarantee that one preventable loss of our students by way of suicide or overdose will be something our community does not recover from. This weekend, the CDC director, Dr. Redfield, specifically said that we needed to make data-driven decisions and confirms that K-12 schools can operate face-to-face learning safely. My children desperately need in-person education. My son is among many struggling at Chisholm with the failing Summit platform. I am thankful you'll be discussing this further later today. While at home, the communication between teachers, students, and parents is severely lacking. The stress that these students go through is really sad. I know that there are educators in our district that are relentless in trying to teach online. I can't blame them. I work in healthcare. Sometimes working at home would be awesome. I think that some educators underestimate the impact though that they have on these students. We look to you to make a difficult decision. I get that we are in the head of a pandemic, but it is also a critical time that we either rise up as a community or our students fall behind. There is no in-between in this scenario. They will not catch up. Thank you for your time tonight. I truly appreciate all of you.
Thank you.
The next two items are presentations. The next presentation is from the Opportunity Academy on their DOJ grant.
Okay, we're a little behind in there, we're trying to figure it out. Am I doing the Department of Justice?
Yes.
Okay, all right, cool. I just want to make sure I've got a couple things I get to talk about. So Opportunity Academy, last year through ESDAC applied for the Department of Justice grant. This is to promote a safe school environment. We work alongside ESDAC to build some social, emotional, and trauma-informed learning. And the grant also comes with a software that will be loaded onto the students' computers. And what that will do is we'll get some real-time feedback with how students are feeling that day. They'll be able to kind of do a check-in, check-out kind of system with it. And teachers will get real-time feedback of how to work with the student in that, on that day. So ESDAC will provide a partnership with initial training on the Vibe software, and then they will provide monthly support with us as well. And so our Opportunity Academy staff will be trained later this year as kind of a pilot part of the program, so we'll have 1 or 2 classrooms starting on it, and then from there we'll take that staff input and we'll begin working on training the entire staff and then making it part of our daily routine. So this is something that we're really excited about at Opportunity Academy, and glad that we can partner with ESDAC on it. So. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Tyler Schwall.
What kind of training exactly are you going to be giving?
So we're going to get, they told us we'd get initial training on how to use the software and how to integrate that with students. And then they're going to provide continual support for how to work with students with trauma, which is most of our students. And so just that continued support. We've partnered with them in the past and used them in some of their trainings to kind of help support how we can best help either specific students or as the group as a whole. And so we're really looking forward to that. So they're going to do a monthly, once a month training, I think, for the next, starting in January. So probably till the end of the school year, we'll have them once a month during our collaboration time, so we're really looking forward to that.
Any other questions? Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Will you send out Mr. Schaefer, please?
Yes.
And the next item is the central, our capital plan update for the fall of 2020.
All right, everybody, well, tonight, what you have in front of you, laying on the desk, is a spreadsheet. But really, what that represents is our 5-year capital outlay plan that Mr. Schaefer and I will be going over here just momentarily. But most of the detail is right there within that document you have, but the presentation we're gonna give you today just gives you the highlights of what's essentially in there. So the way we kind of wanted to start this out, especially for those at home maybe that are maybe wondering, what is capital outlay, what does it mean? And so we wanted to start there. And essentially what capital outlay is it's that public funding that's set aside for the improvements to the facilities of our USD 373. So if you think about acquisition, construction, reconstruction, repair, remodeling, furnishing, maintaining, and equipment that is going to be used for school district purposes. Right now, we have a current mill levy of 8 mills, and so that's expected to generate about $1.3 million annually. So for those of you that own a home, if you owned a $100,000 home, just kind of bear with us with the math, we just try to make it simple and rounded. But a $100,000 home, you're contributing about $71.04 a year to capital outlay, to what this plan is. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what that investment generates and what we're going to do with that money. But one of the things to keep in mind is since that last bond for capital outlay was approved back in 1996, it's really important for the district, Chris and I, to collaborate on being as strategic as we can to make sure that that $1.3 million stretches as far as we can, but also hits the things that are most important and the things that just simply can't wait. And so to go into a little bit more detail, I brought Chris with me, and we're going to kind of go building by building fairly swiftly, but just highlight to you overall what the general expense is going to be for the year for that building, and then just a couple things that are going to be the front runners of what's driving that capital outlay. So Chris, after you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Chris Schaefer, Director of Facilities. Good to see you. Thanks for sharing your time with us. At the high school for this year, we've got $525 allotted. Majority of that is for those 4 items that are up there. HVAC replacement, which is in in the area 2. The bleacher replacement is the second of 3 phases of bleacher replacement in Ravenscroft Gym. That'll be the west set of bleachers on the main floor. Locker replacement is a phased project also. We'll be starting on some of the hall locker replacement, and the auditorium seating will be, that's what it says, replacing that. Brooks Trade Center, we allocate $3,500 each year for shop equipment, scrubbers, and filters, things like that that are needed on the CPE equipment in there.
BOAG.
And BOAG is the same thing. It's the same thing. They have a lot of industrial equipment. Chisholm, we've got 191 allotted. That is going to start with HVAC replacement in the 20s pod is on our list this year. That begins a phase project, 3 phases. We'll be working from the 20s pod, 30s pod, and 40s pod as we go along. Each one of them are all from the 96 era. And the 20s pod is the one that's causing us the most problems right now, so that's where we're going to start. Also flooring, isolated flooring in the building. Santa Fe, the exterior of Santa Fe is leaking. The brick and the caulking on the building are pretty aged. They haven't been recaulked or sealed or mortar tuck pointed in several years. So we're going to start a phase project on that. We're starting small this year. Then we gain to $65,000 the next couple of years after that. We go on for several years to get the whole building. We'll just do it in pieces in the worst areas as we can. Cooper is for HVAC units and flooring. And Northridge is sealing the parking lot, also doing more HVAC units and more flooring in that building. Slate Creek, we have 115,000. We have 2 rooftop units that are currently giving us issues, and we've linked them along, but they're running on about half their normal capacity as far as compressors and things. At their age, they're not, we didn't feel they were worth continuing to repair them. They're problematic. Their fire panel is also getting to the point that they don't carry parts for it, so we have money in there for that, and some flooring as well. South Breeze flooring, which is, carpet replacement with some wood limbs. Sunset, we have money in there for shelter door engineering and also some flooring. And Walton is flooring as well, so entire 8,500. McKinley, the exterior of this building is also in need of restoration, needs cleaned, tuck pointed, the caulking around the windows is in bad repair, and the asphalt parking lot needs crack sealed and concrete repair. And then we also have made an effort to start replacing the HVAC units in each of the offices here. They predate this building becoming an administrative building. Some of them date back into the 80s. So they are needing some attention badly. The service center, part of the security grant, they recommended that we replace our exterior door keys. So there's money in there for rekeying the exterior doors. And then the main gate on the bus area is falling off and has been put back together several times, and it's in need of a new one. So we've got some money in there for that as well. These are just some of the more, if you look forward on the sheets that you have in front of you, the yellow one is the column that is where we're currently at this year, and those are a better explanation of the breakout of each of the ones that we just told you about. And then this is the other 5 columns on the right. There's different breakouts for the way we're going through those. And basically, what we're trying to do is spread the money out evenly, equitably around both buildings, and try to keep up with all of the many needs so that we can, keep up, get the hot spots and try to keep the building safe and dry and clean.
All right, so Chris, I did get one question. Someone wants to know, what is a fire panel?
Our fire alarm system in the building reports back to a main brain fire panel, and those the computerized system inside those fire panels are aging, and we were notified probably a year ago that some of our units are starting to not be serviced as far as parts. So some of them we have parts available, and those are the ones we're going to do later. The ones that we did last year, this year, are the ones that if we have a breakdown, the fire panel doesn't have replacement parts. So we would have to go to a fire watch, and until we got it replaced, and it would be more of a hurried situation instead of a planned situation. So we're trying to plan ahead.
Another question I have, last one for you, is to talk a little bit about what's wrong with the storm shelter doors that have to be replaced.
Some of you may remember back in the bond issue, there was some discussion about the doors on the shelters. On most of our shelters that were built in the late 90s, they have wooden doors on steel frames, and wooden doors are not the best to have in a tornado situation. So we are going to look at hiring an engineer that can assist us with putting better rated doors on there for another level of protection on those shelters. We're going to start with, I believe it's Sunset this year, and then South Breeze and North Ridge after that. They have basically the same shelter situation. So just trying to improve it the best we can.
Well, do you have questions? Any of you have questions for us?
Yeah, I have a question. By my quick math, it looks like HVAC this upcoming year is close to $400 or over $400,000 of the little over $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
So about half of our expense for the year. Is that is that ratio going to get smaller in the next couple of years, or do we just have so much that it's gonna continue to be a big chunk of our capital outlay?
Well, if you remember back to the bond, they were talking 8 or 9 million for
Uh-huh.
HVAC. So, I mean, yeah, it's, what we're trying to do is hit the worst spots as we can with what we have, and do things so that if we end up getting a bond, what we have done isn't gonna be wasted. Like at the high school, we're repairing, air handling units that are on the roof. They blow down into the occupied space, so whatever that space is, that ever gets remodeled, we still have airflow to those spaces. They would just have to allocate it to different rooms if there was a remodel. So we're trying to hit things that are wearing out or causing issues that will be long-term better towards the district like that.
Okay. So is it going to
But, yeah,
continue
they're gonna keep going down.
the next few years, so are we gonna continue spending about half of our capital outlay on
I don't know if
HVAC?
it'll be half, but it will be a significant amount every year is gonna be spent on HVAC as we start repairing and replacing these systems, and so it'll probably be pretty close to what you see there as an annual outlay.
The approach we're taking right now is at the high school, my maintenance people that are up there gave us feedback on the areas where they were having the most issues. So we hired a company to go in there and to basically dissect the area. They went in, they opened the ceiling, they went into every unit, they looked at the pipes, they x-rayed our water pipes that send the coolant back and forth and the steam back and forth to the units. Everything checked out on the pipes, things like that, and then there were things that they said, that needed addressed. And those are the things that we then planned for the next year. And this year, we did the same thing. We had another one look at this other area that we're doing this year, area 2 and 6, and we planned accordingly again. It basically has the same issues, so.
Yeah, so, I mean, ultimately, like you said, what was the bond request for, 8 million? So,
There was about 8 or 9 million
Right.
roughly
so
in
we
there
have
for
$8 million
HVAC.
worth of legitimate repairs and replacements that need to occur. We're just spreading that out
Yeah.
over X many years, so at $500,000 a year, yeah, it'll take us 16 years at that pace. And then and as you can imagine from owning your own units at home, then you just restart the process again. So from me to you, I would say that, yeah, that's a realistic $300,000, $500,000 annual expense in HVAC every year for this district.
We're trying to put a lot of effort in, the oldest stuff first, you know, like the high school. In the original building, the HVAC system is from 1973. When you get to the front, it's from 09. You know, whatever era the building was built in, that's where the HVAC sits, except for what we've done to it. So we're just trying to concentrate on the oldest areas, getting them back up, getting airflow, getting temperatures under control, things like that. Because we had issues a couple years ago with.
Yeah.
And that's
lot
amazing
of
that you
hot
have
areas,
units
a lot of
from
bad areas.
1976. I mean, so it's a testament to how well our folks in maintenance and facilities have been able to keep these things going.
Yeah, I've
But
done a
it
great
also
job
is-
of keeping it together, it's just old and
It's
it
time.
needs repairs.
It's time, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Any other questions?
I was just curious, looking at the spreadsheet, 2020, most of those numbers are crossed out. Is that money we spent, those projects are done?
Yeah,
The ones that
the
aren't
crossed out, the crossed out means they're done. The ones that are there that aren't crossed out are projects that are either still underway that we haven't closed out yet, or some that we haven't started. Like North Ridge, there's a bus drive up there that we need to redo some concrete. Because of COVID last summer, we weren't able to bid in time to get the summer cycle. And so we kind of missed our window, and then school started, and we don't really want to tear up the bus drive. So it's kind of something that's probably gonna have to carry over into next spring or fall, spring or summer, so that we can get a hold of that. The pool is back basically in service with water in it, it's pumping, everything looks pretty good. But we do have a few little small items yet, so I didn't want to cross it off yet.
Gotcha.
And the HVAC replacement that we have for the $125,000, the air handler unit is in our building at the service center. And, hopefully they'll start that, installation the week after Thanksgiving. So we've got everybody on board and they're about ready to go, and that will greatly improve the airflow in Area 1. We had it checked, and it was down about 50% from what was originally specified to be back in the 70s because of age, basically. So this new unit will give us quite a bit better airflow through the system. And as we replace these, you'll see that increase along the whole building, so.
Thank you, Chris.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One thing to keep in mind as it relates to this is just the maintenance and facilities piece. There's also the capital outlay, technology and other purchases that do come with that, so we'll be talking later in the year about those.
Okay, the next item is the consent agenda.
Move to approve consent agenda items A through D.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? 7-0. The next item is old business, the COVID update.
Okay.
Fred?
Yeah, we got all kinds of fun things going on all the time, it seems like. We've got 3 things to discuss this evening. The first are the numbers, and I sent out, or I put that in board docs, that gating criteria, and I mentioned in there that I could not calculate the trend from the Harvey County site. But we obviously have been able to pull it down from the state site. For some reason, this afternoon and even last week, I couldn't get the numbers, but now this evening, of course, when Angela brings over, it's got the numbers on there. So I do have that now, and I won't be able to put that in the document that you guys all have. But when you look at the trend, the last 2 weeks from the state site, the trend has been down. It has been down. When you calculate it from the Harvey County site, it's also down from the previous week, about 9 cases, or from the previous time. So that's not in there, but that is what that value says, okay? So even though the trend is down, okay, still we have a high case number. And when you look at the disease spread, you can go green or yellow. It really doesn't make any difference on that value because we have 3 values associated there. Decreasing or stable. I consider that to be more stable than anything. Percent positive at the time of pull this afternoon, it was 16.56%. When you look at the 2 values associated with Harvey County, from 11/8 and then the week of 11/15, you had 157 and 149 tests respectively. So that's a 16.56. The cutoff is for red is 15%. So we're red there. Looking at staff attendance, we're orange with staff attendance. And if you've noticed the last couple of weeks on student attendance, I've also included the active case counts. Our percentage of attendance this past week was 91.4 or 90.81 if you consider the student case counts. When you average those 2 things together, that still puts us in yellow in terms of attendance. The other 2 factors that we don't officially look at unless there's a committee decision, which this one does, lend itself to that. 2-week cumulative incident rate, we're still very, very high, 1,362. If you remember, 150, I believe, anything above 150 is considered red. And obviously, you guys have heard all over the news about the referring capacity of local hospitals. There's just not space there. One of the biggest concerns related to that is that patients that would normally need care for non-COVID reasons, they're struggling with in that regard. So obviously I would include that as a red. So when you look at the 3 criteria range, red to yellows, I would lean that being more of an orange, but once again, according to our criteria, that's a committee decision. You look at the 5 range, you got 3 reds and a couple of yellows, all right? Talking about total active cases, when I pull that number at 12:55 this afternoon, there were 316 cases on the Harvey County website, okay? Last week, it showed 283 active cases around the same time, a few hours later in the day. Quarantine statistics for the week. This would have been last Friday, 249 students. The week before, we had 287. Staff, we had 62. The week before, we had 52. Looking at active case counts, got 23 active cases, 14 students, and 9 staff. It's so funny how that changes. This morning when I got here, there were 20 active students, and then by the end of the day, just based upon how that works through, there were like 14. So, 26 active cases. Let me see. So, when you look at that from an athletic perspective, I would consider that, but once again, it says committee decision, since you guys are the committee, when you start looking at how that goes, okay, I would consider that an orange, I really, really would, just based upon the other factors with the hospital capacity and and what was that third one, or the fourth one there? Yep, incidence rate being so high, so high. So that's how I'm gonna proceed in terms of athletics. What we need to do, because one of the things we talked about is we wanna provide consistency for staff and parents and families. And so a recommendation that I would make, between now, actually, when we get back from Thanksgiving break up into Christmas, would be that we go to, if you're ready for that recommendation, we go to remote 7 through 12, K through 6 would be hybrid. Pre-K, just because of the nature of pre-K, they would stay in full 100% attendance as long as they can stay open. Our biggest issue has been their quarantines associated with staff. That's why we've had to go remote in that facility. Opportunity Academy, they would like to look at changing their gating criteria and go to a hybrid model when we're at Orange, which I do support, once again, to reduce exposure, where they would just be in half attendance every day. So half the students in the morning, the other half in the afternoon. I would propose we do this from now until Christmas. I struggle with hybrid, as you guys all know at the elementary level, and all of you struggle with that as well. Our numbers, when you look at that in terms of our internal numbers and our case counts, they're not horrible. I'm not saying any cases are good, but our case counts are not out of this world as it relates to this. No more so than what we've had over the course of the last few weeks. And I'd open up for any discussion or questions.
So in essence, generally you're recommending an
Orange. Yeah.
With the change in opportunity.
With the change in opportunity.
So I assume they're wanting that change in orange to be from here on out.
Yes.
So we would just adopt that and that would.
We would include that in the gating criteria. Anybody have any questions?
We communicated with the health department already and shared our thoughts with them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And you do have a line to Newton Medical Center as well, right?
Pardon?
You do have contact with Newton Medical Center as well?
I have not contacted Newton Medical Center specifically about this
But you have
particular
talked to our
model.
health department?
The health department.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But Bob Leeson, I know she had called me a few weeks ago just about the severity of the hospital situation. I know that's not decreased.
You wanna talk about the YMCA program, what that would look like in hybrid for?
Well, what we're gonna try to do, Luke, with that is instead of going to the Y, one of our biggest issues we've had from a staffing perspective is that we're mixing all of those kids and exposing our staff out there during that time. And it's just really scary for a lot of our staff. So what we're gonna try to do is try to house those in the buildings. We haven't had a lot of participation out there anyway. And so I'm gonna be dancing around this really carefully, Luke, because what we don't want, we want to help parents that need it, but we don't want to be watching those students just because you wanna go grocery shopping or Christmas shopping or something like that. And I don't know how else to put that. That sounds terrible from me, but we are trying to help parents out with this because we do understand they need to maintain employment, but our numbers have not been very great out there when we get offer that. And so,
one more thing to add, Fred, if you don't mind, just I think I'll talk to a little bit, clarify is, the other thing is that as the numbers are going up, what we do know is that the YMCA, being the private business that it is, that we know that they have closed before, and they will be looking at closing again. And so what we're trying to do is be proactive of saying, we don't want to have all of our eggs in that one basket and then they close and then we don't have a plan. So what we're trying to do now is, again, foresee that coming and say, how can we still handle this, but not be tied to that one location. So there's that piece in there too, that I just want to make sure people know that it's great to partner with an outside entity, but we also can't control what that outside entity decides to do in terms of closing or keeping their doors open.
And I think it's good that we reached out and had that partnership, but for me, if we would have been doing that same thing in hybrid, if we were to go to that again, I don't think I could have supported it for the same thing your staff brought up, that we're taking kids from 5 buildings and put them in one spot, and then 2 days of the week they're back with some other kids. So, yeah, I wouldn't have supported it. I probably would have rather kids be remote before we start mixing up cohorts again like that. Another question I have is, how many of our, do you have any just sort of general idea, maybe Santa Fe separate from elementary, how many of our staff are teaching on-site and remote at the same time?
All of them. I mean, when you, except for the high school, they're all remote now, okay? They're all teaching, because when you think about that, like at that elementary level, for example, even if they're in hybrid, okay, and they've got all their kids, like on the Monday and the Tuesday, they've got kids who are on quarantine at home. So they're having to teach those kids at home at the same time as they're teaching those kids on site. It's brutal for our teachers.
And especially with the number of teachers we have quarantined, right?
Yes, yes. And our staff are just working so hard, they're having to cover for each other. Teachers are having to cover, aides are having to cover, because of those teachers, if they can remote in, if they're on quarantine, we're legal to have an aide facilitate the class, but it's not what we want, but it's just what we have to do. That's why in the instances we've had to look at, going remote, we just don't have personnel to cover it. It's just what it is. It's just an untenable situation for those guys.
How quickly could we get to that point again where we're at 60 staff quarantined right now? How quickly could we be, okay?
I'll put it to you this way.
We could say hybrid K through 6, but could we be saying next week, yeah, but we're going
Well,
remote in this building?
But what we would do, it would be a building at a time, okay?
Right.
For example, one of our buildings right now, one of our elementary schools has 50 students out because of isolation and quarantine. And that was because of it might have been 2 incidents, but I know late Friday was 1 incident that took out 25 kids. Okay, and it's just what it is. I mean, we cannot socially distance in those classrooms. And one of the things we're gonna have to do is look at changing our model. If we come back after Christmas, we can't do at the elementary level the hybrid the way we're doing it now. And socially distance, it's just not possible. We've just gotta figure out a way to do that logistically. So when you get that model all worked out for me, Luke, why don't you visit me next weekend, and we're gonna meet, the administrators now are meeting, I think it's the 2nd of December, and I've just thrown some stuff out there, and we're gonna try to come up with a better model that we can enact. If we could try it before Christmas, we will, but if we have to come back, I don't think numbers after Christmas are gonna go down. I mean, we don't anticipate that right now, so we just gotta get through it as best we can. It's not any fun.
Well, and I'll just say, we haven't talked about it yet, but I have some concerns about going remote at Chisholm for the reasons these ladies shared. So I don't know.
Yeah, and the only reason to do that is that's the age where you start having more transmission from the youth to the adult. The littles, there's not a ton, although we have had some transmission with close contacts at the lower grades. Most of ours has been at the secondary level, and that's what the data kind of says, nationally about, you start looking at that middle through high schools when you can have more transmission
Right.
to the adults.
But we know our students are struggling,
We do.
so I guess I'm gonna have some really high expectations at the beginning of the year to get these kids back on track if we're gonna go remote for 3 weeks, plus the Christmas break.
I understand.
I think it has been helpful as a parent who has someone at Chisholm. It's been helpful to have them on the bell schedule, like the high school has been on, just from what's happening in my house. That has been a benefit, so I hope that that's a benefit for others as well. So I do appreciate that change that's been made for Chisholm.
I still have concerns from what we've heard about doing remote, so. But I guess I'm willing to take that short period of time and just have some really high expectations for getting our kids back on track.
Well, they'll be up to bat here pretty quick, and we can talk to them about some of that stuff.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the mode of learning as orange for the dates between November 30th until Christmas break, and adopt the change in the mode of orange for Opportunity Academy as presented.
Second.
Does that cover what you're saying? And Sue seconded it? Any further discussion? All those in favor? 7-0? Okay, thank you.
Just a reminder, as it relates to athletics and activities, we'll follow the criteria, so we'll be in orange this week. If it changes for the week we get back, we'll pump those numbers out on Monday. I can't remember, there was a couple of other things too we were gonna talk about here tonight. I should pull up more docs, you think I'd be watching that thing, wouldn't you? One of the things that we're gonna be able to provide, we hope, for our staff, well, not going to be able to, we will be able to provide somehow, we're not sure exactly how that's going to work, is some testing. Through the CARES Act stuff, the dollars that were put out by the state, there are like 5 or 6 regions that are gonna allow us to be able to offer unlimited testing to really anybody we want to, okay? Now, I don't see us doing that initially for sure for students, but I do see us trying to offer that hopefully after we get back from Thanksgiving break, we can offer some saliva-based PCR testing for staff. And we can offer it as many times as we want during the course of a week. There's a 24-hour turnaround time. And, you know, my concern a little bit is, you know, how we're gonna facilitate all that, how we're gonna get those samples down, but those are all technical issues that we're gonna take care of. Our health officials will administer the saliva-based testing. And like I said, there's that 24-hour turnaround, and what I hope it does is bring some peace of mind to staff. I have no idea how well this is going to work, especially initially. It's not going to be great, we know that. It's going to be voluntary. I put that little survey out over the weekend. Right now I've got like 89 respondents, and only one said they don't want to participate in it, and that's totally fine. You know, what my hope is over the course of time is it'll just help us find those sources of infection before we have to worry about other quarantines. And so I'm kind of excited about getting that going. It is of no cost to us. No cost to us other than facilitating it within and getting the samples in. So I'm just kind of excited about that. That's all that I have.
Are you gonna talk about this one?
Who?
The nitros?
Oh, that was it. I knew there was one more thing. Nitros. The Nitros group wants to continue to use the facilities. According to our dating criteria, we really are not letting outside groups use those facilities. And so, you know, instead of me making that decision, I don't have any of the history of the Nitros and how long they've been in the community and things of that nature. So we thought it'd be better that we bring it to you all to discuss, to see what your thoughts are about allowing that outside group. They do pay facilities rent. They have a deal that goes back several years. I think they get a really good financial deal, which I don't care about. I mean, we're serving kids and community here a little bit. So I just kind of wanted to know what your thoughts were as it related to that. Thank you for not letting me forget that.
I think with all the precautions they have listed there that they're willing to take, and they're not contacting any of our people, I think for me, it's absolutely, I support them continuing.
Yeah, I agree with what Luke said. You know, it's one of those sports they can't take their swimming pool with them. There's really minimal contact. I think it's important that we allow them to keep functioning and help them get through this really difficult time for everybody. So I would support them to continue. What's the program?
Yeah, same.
Okay. Do you need a formal vote? Or?
Probably wouldn't be a bad idea, just so we cross the i's, dot the t's, right? It's cold.
It is 2020, right?
I move to approve the continued use of our pool facility by the Newton Nitros.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? 7-0. Very good. Anything else?
That's it. Want more? You want more?
No, it's
Fine.
fine. That's fine. All right, next item is the approval of gift requests.
I move to approve gift request as presented with a special thank you to Strawbridge Studios for their gift to the district office as a signing bonus in the value of $750, to the Gene Haas Foundation, to Newton High School Machining Program for their grant for scholarships and student competitions in the value of $7,500. Veer and Beverly English to their gift to Newton Rayler Robotics. A donation to assist with team expenses in the value of $500. And we also thank Midland Bank for their gift to Cooper to support our infant toddler program in the value of $300. Kathy Murphy for her gift to the Rayler Robotics team for team expenses for $20. And Angela Altum for her gift to Rayler Robotics for team expenses in the value of $50.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Who had the second?
7-0. Approval of the Next Link agreement.
This was, Harvey County Economic Development reached out to me. This is a company that has been awarded a grant from the state to provide internet access to underserved rural areas. They want to put they were originally wanting to put a monopole tower out there at Walton. When we went out there to Walton, we got that existing structure already there. It's about 83 or 4 feet tall. When they did their analysis, it will work to go ahead and place their equipment up on that structure. What we get out of the deal is a internet backup out there, 100 megabytes per second. And also, any USB 373 employee will get $10 off of their internet monthly, 50% off of any installation, and if it's within like 30 days of the installation, they get it for free. So it's just one of those deals where it's going to allow another internet provider to come in to the communities. And like I said, one of the things I was excited about is that we do have a backup internet out there. It's wireless, but just like this past year when the trash truck hit the line up north of town and they were out of internet access, we wouldn't miss a beat out there. So it's a 3-year contract. To me, it's kind of a no-brainer for that redundancy. Any questions?
I move to approve the Next Link MOU to provide internet service to patrons and serve as a backup to the school. Second.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor? 7-0. Newton High School 2021-22 proposed course catalog.
All right, as much as we are, working very hard on what we're doing this school year, we've already asked our grades 5 through 12 to think about next school year. And so they were giving us, their thoughts on what courses they would like to bring to you, so it's an item of information for this month. And I think you can see the breakdown on, each of those. Santa Fe and Chisholm go together, as far as their courses there for the math. And then the high school and Opportunity Academy had several courses. I think as you open up each one, what we try to do is to make sure that you can see whether it's, a required or an elective, how long the course is, and if there's any costs that go with that.
Are you talking about the new high school catalog or the proposed new courses?
Talking about the proposed new courses. Am I on the right thing?
We're on the catalog.
Oh.
That's okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, I was trying to get ahead of myself. Okay, just forget all of that. Remember it for the next one.
And Sheila, we might want to move, these got out of order, so if we're doing the course catalog, we might want to follow up with the courses before we do second.
I think so, yes, that would be good.
Right.
So
Yeah,
C
we
and,
got-
So switch D and E.
Yep.
Is everybody okay with that? All right, that's fine.
We don't have to forget anything now. You're on
Okay,
board.
You can just roll right into it.
Yeah.
All right, okay, so, and then in the course catalog, you should see everything in there that would be in addition, that would be in red. So it would maybe be easier for you to see what may have changed or would be proposed to be changed from this year to next year. And I know one of those, for example, they're working on, more options for the students in math. When you look at that chart, you're gonna see arrows going all over the place, for example, in there. Qualified admissions has also changed. So it's a rather long document, but not a ton of updates in there in regards to what you might see. And Caleb might have more information if he wants to share anything other than what I've offered.
I'm just here for questions.
And I know at this time we give you quite a bit, so that's why we do it in 1 month and then have the vote on the next.
Anybody have any questions? Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Caleb.
Thanks, Caleb.
We'll send Mr. Meninga out. Yeah, here they come.
The next item, under new business, last one will be the Summit Learning update.
We were asked at the last board meeting to give you guys a little bit of a progress report or an update on Summit Learning based upon some concerns. We heard some concerns this evening from a couple of parents, and so Mr. Meninga is going to go over his slideshow. He said he was going to make that take place at warp speed. And then give you guys an opportunity to ask questions afterwards. And then we'll just have whatever kind of a discussion you want about Summit Learning. Just as background information for those that don't know, in my previous district, we did have Summit Learning. I'm not a Summit Learning salesman. It's got a lot of potential. It really, really does. We have some things to work on here, and that's kind of why we're starting this conversation tonight. So I'll just fill in until Joey gets going. Maybe.
This is where you have to tell a funny joke.
Funny jokes. I don't know any funny jokes that I can tell at a board meeting. There you go. Some people laughing there, didn't I?
All right, well, good evening. I am Joey Meninga. I'm principal at Chisholm Middle School, and I'm here to talk about first quarter at Chisholm Middle School and Summit Learning in general. Just to kind of give some background on what brought this up. The main issue is our first quarter data from Chisholm shows that the student work completion in Summit Learning and our overall academic progress during the first 9 weeks of school was lacking and not providing a quality education for our students. So I always like to look at where we were, where we are, and where we are going. So where we were, 2018 and 19 was when Chisholm piloted the Summit Learning program with one team for an entire school year. Then last year, we rolled out Summit Learning building-wide. It was approved by the Board of Education on March 25th, or 2019 as part of the Gemini 1 school redesign plan. So we piloted, or we rolled out building-wide last year, and when March happened, we ended up, everybody going into pandemic, and so we did not really get a full year of implementation for Summit building-wide. Then this year, as you know, pandemic continues. Our focus at the beginning of the year for planning was on safety and procedures for students and staff, and we developed a learning in the time of COVID guidance document for our school that helped guide teachers for how we are going to teach in remote, hybrid, fully on-site, and all of the different safety procedures and traffic patterns and things like that to help keep everyone healthy and safe, healthy and safe at this time at the beginning of the year. So as a result, our learning was hampered because students are not in the building every day, and we have been trying to learn how to educate students in different learning modes at the same time, while teachers are managing teaching both on-site and off-site students, and that's partially because of how we developed our master schedule, where every teacher has a remote learning hour. So they were teaching both students on-site and the remote learning students as well. And then when we had hybrid mode, also teaching those in hybrid when students were in the classroom and also at home learning. So as a result, teacher workload has increased dramatically in order to help educate our students in a variety of learning modes. And before the pandemic, our educational system had evolved over the course of 120 years. And now we are having to try to completely change what we've done in a matter of 6 months. So why Summit Learning? Why did we choose this? It's because it is personalized learning. This is a key component of the Kansas Can Redesign initiative. It involves mastery learning. So we don't just go over a test, if you missed it, too bad, we move on. We get to go back and work on the assignment until the students have mastered it and learned the information. Relationships. Summit Learning has a mentoring component which helps promote positive student connections with adults in the building. It also provides rigorous instruction. It provides a curriculum that requires higher order thinking and problem-solving skills. Summit Learning also has a wealth of student data. We can see each objective that a student has mastered or is struggling with and make adjustments to provide support for those students. It also provides workshops. Workshops are targeted student support based on Summit Learning. So a workshop would be taking a small group of students who are struggling with a specific objective, bringing them together and having a lesson with them to help them get caught up on what they need to understand. And then flexibility. Students can resubmit work or take assessments until they have mastered the material. So again, like I said, it's not just taking the test, we move on whether you got it or not. If a student falls behind, they can always go back, redo the material, try it again, and make up anything that they've missed in the past. So why not traditional learning, as we've always done for the past? It's what all of us know and went through. Part of it is because teachers move on whether the student learned the information or not. Also, it has specific deadlines and due dates. There's no opportunities to go back and learn the material for mastery of information. And there's no specific data to track student progress and provide targeted support, other than maybe a letter grade. Also, mentoring is not built into a traditional educational model. It is a fixed mindset and not a growth mindset. And it involves mostly teacher-led learning. Students are not learning how to become independent learners. So what are some of the challenges that we faced this first 9 weeks? First, no established routine. There have been constant changes between learning modes. And that's just the state of the pandemic. That's nobody's fault, that's just the way it is. And I know that as a Board of Education, you've had to make very hard decisions each week on what learning mode is best for our students. And I don't envy you for having to do that. So I know it's a very tough decision. Also, asynchronous instruction. When we started planning at the beginning of the year, one of the key pieces for remote learners and learners who were learning off-site was that we provide asynchronous instruction. We just found out that that probably didn't work so well for middle school students, and they struggled to stay engaged when learning at home. Also, we only had 2 weeks to learn and implement Canvas, while also planning for asynchronous instruction, COVID safety procedures, reducing our curriculum since we weren't going to be seeing students quite as much, adjusting our master schedule, and also learning new technology. Some other challenges included tracking attendance for remote learners at Infinite Campus. It was not set up very well to track remote learning attendance with the one check-in participation for attendance each day. Also, we did not have some of our in-person parent communication opportunities like we normally have, like an open house, or a Summit Learning Parent Night, or our fall parent-teacher conferences. Those would have all been great opportunities to communicate with parents and address issues before they really became a big problem. Also, with COVID, that came with student and staff quarantines, and that also created quite a challenge during the first 9 weeks. We have had limited communication with students and families, partially because of limited visitation allowed, and then also just with virtual meetings. It's just not quite as easy to communicate in the virtual world as it is face-to-face. And then having to plan for teaching in a variety of learning modes. We did that, but we did not necessarily plan for how to address the lack of student engagement when students were learning at home. So what was the teacher day like before COVID? Teachers would plan lessons for the week, target instruction based on student needs. They would look at student data and plan for student support based on that data. They would grade student work and provide feedback, communicate any issues with parents and students, and have some self-care and family time. Of course, it's a lot more than that, but that's kind of a basic outline. Teaching during COVID. Now they have to plan lessons for the week, target instruction, look at student data, grade student work, communicate issues with parents and students, also provide asynchronous instruction in the form of recorded videos, upload that to Canvas. Also update and manage the Canvas learning management system. Follow up with students who did not make a connection for the day. Answer student and parent emails and phone calls, and connect with remote and off-site hybrid students every day for attendance and also to answer questions. They also provided social and emotional support for students during this traumatic time. They've had to learn and adjust to new technology and changes in technology, and they have had to sub and cover for classes during their planned time for other staff who are on quarantine. In addition to all of that, they've had to manage and teach both on-site and virtual students at the same time. That's one of our new things that we've added. They also use their plan time to make phone calls, email students who have not checked in or completed work, and that's if they're not subbing for another teacher. They also have apprehension for their own health and safety as well as their family. And there's very little time for self-care, which involves or ends up with teacher mental health suffering. So what have we done in the first 9 weeks to help support our parents and families? We started with our family engagement conferences with a talking points document that's linked there so that every parent got the same information no matter which teacher they talked to. We also tried to communicate different expectations and schedules throughout the first 9 weeks. We did that through email, Facebook, and on our website. We also made videos to help guide students with how to do their learning while at home. We have tried to follow up and address parent concerns in a timely manner. We have worked with families to accommodate requests for changes in learning mode preference, whether that's going from remote to on-site or from on-site to remote. We have had numerous phone calls and emails to students and parents to follow up and get them connected with schools. And we have had parent meetings, phone calls, and emails to help provide support and guidance for students. We also provided asynchronous instruction by creating lessons and videos and posting those to Canvas. Parents or teachers have also made numerous phone calls and emails to students and parents, and they have also had parent meetings, phone calls, and emails to help provide support and guidance for the students. So other classroom support that teachers have done, teachers have created an organization table for students that some of them are using. Also another example was in 7th grade, there's a progress tracking document that's linked in the presentation that all of you got. So they've created a couple of different ways for students to help organize their days. Also, one of our teams does a weekly bulletin with reminders, a schedule, and due dates. We also have weekly mentoring with our students to check in and help students set goals for the week. Other study guides that they've used include Cornell Notes and study guides. So what are we doing now as a result of our 9 weeks data? So we have made some changes in order to help improve our instruction for our students. We added synchronous instruction and attendance. So now students are supposed to check in to every single class, every single hour, much like what the high school is doing. Teachers are teaching students virtual and on-site simultaneously. So they have a Google Meet open each hour that they are teaching. So they have their on-site students and their virtual students learning in class at the same time. Also, because Infinite Campus does better with on-site attendance, and we're taking attendance every hour, they now get the automatic attendance phone call if a student does not check in during one of their class periods. We have also added Workshop Wednesdays. Workshop Wednesdays is where we take data from Summit and we group students according to objectives that they need to work on, and then teachers work with those smaller groups of students to help get them caught up in what they need. We have also made elective classes an enrichment class when students are not on site. So this allows them to focus on their core academic material and gives them time that they need to get their assignments caught up when they're at home. And then we are also working on trying to communicate more information to parents. In addition to that, for our staff, we have done Canvas training with Megan Nagel to help us get a little bit more synchronized across the building so that we're consistent from one team to the next. We will be enlisting the help of our support coach from Summit, and we will be doing a Facebook Live Q&A session on December 14th. So what does the data say about our first 9 weeks? So the number that brought everyone's attention was on November 9th, 1,211 incompletes out of 1,835 possible grades. just 10 days later, we had 1,056 incompletes out of 1,832 possible grades. So that was just about a week, a little over a week into implementing our changes. And you can see just in a little over a week, we already had some positive results. Also, for our academic progress as far as letter grades, on November 9th, at the end of the first quarter, we had 308 Ds and 1,001 F grades. And that's 34% of our possible grades. Just 1 week later, we had 249 Ds, 874 Fs, and a 30% rate of Ds and Fs. So again, in just 1 week, we had a reduction in the number of Ds and Fs, which I know those numbers are shocking, and that's why we are trying to make changes and adjust to help our students.
Can I ask you a question really quick? Are your all remote students lumped in with your flexible students? So this is
Yes.
everybody?
This is everybody.
Okay.
Yes. Student attendance. Before November 5th, this was just towards the very end of our 9 weeks, we had 66 unexcused absences, mostly due to missed daily check-ins. The first day that we implemented our daily check-in policy, we only had 8 unexcused absences. So an immediate change in the amount of student absences. Also, just on kind of a side note, our office referrals, our student behavior has been greatly reduced this year, and that's partially because we have been in hybrid and only have half the students. But at this time last year, we had 118 office referrals. This year, we've only had 30. And the types of behaviors that we have been pretty minimal compared to what we've had in the past. Also, other positive data, there was a survey sent out, I believe, from Mr. Van Rankin's office to students at Chisholm, and they had quite a bit of positive information. Was it not from Mr. Van Rankin? Oh, from Ms. Wendling's office, sorry. But they had pretty positive things to say from the survey. So I won't read them all, but basically they feel like the work is challenging, but in a good way overall. 76 out of 83 responses. They feel like the amount of work that the teachers have given them is enough. 73 say just right. Teachers share with them what they need to do in class. 69 said yes, 41 said sometimes. And my school is doing what is needed to help me feel safe. 94 yes, 16 no. So other positive news that I would like to report. Our parents are passionate about their child's education. That is evident. Almost all of our interactions with parents have been positive. Any concerns that have been shared have been done so with respect and understanding. Parents have responded well to our adjustments. They have worked really hard to encourage their students to follow the guidance and have asked for clarification when needed. Also, some teacher updates from this past week. One teacher had 3 to 4 students that had struggled during the first 9 weeks, but are now engaging and going back and catching up on work that they missed earlier in the school year. And they're going to be able to make up their grade because of Summit's flexibility of personalized learning and allowing students to go back and do that. Workshop Wednesday was a success. One teacher had 30 students pass the Power Focus area after working with them during our first Workshop Wednesday. One thing we have not talked about, but is also very important, is the social emotional care and trauma-informed practices. Students and families are facing a variety of stressful situations. Students have a lot on their plates right now, including caring for siblings, loss of family members due to COVID, facing quarantines due to COVID exposure, and other situations that we don't even know about. The primary focus right now seems to be academic progress, not necessarily the emotional well-being of the students, but I want to say that I think that is a very important piece of this as well. During this traumatic time, we should also focus on the mental health of our students and families. So I know you have lots of questions, so I've tried to answer some of them here. So why is Summit not working? Well, first, challenges related to COVID and students not being in the building. Also, we discovered that asynchronous learning did not work very well for middle school students. They have poor student attendance and daily check-ins when learning at home. Also, our implementation of workshops based on data was not so strong during the first 9 weeks, but we are working to make that better going forward. And we have also not really had a full year to implement Summit building-wide. Also, our communication opportunities with families, as I had mentioned earlier, open house, a Summit Learning Parent Night, fall parent-teacher conferences has been limited or non-existent this first 9 weeks. Most of our communication is happening via email, Google Meet, or phone call, which, as I said earlier, is not as easy to communicate as in-person meetings. So what steps are being taken to ensure that our students will benefit from this model? First, we are offering targeted student support based on data in Summit. So specific objective deficits can be seen and targeted for help with students who need it. Workshop Wednesdays, that's our new initiative that we're starting. One day to set up specifically to help students work on areas they are struggling. And then a synchronous schedule when students are not in the building. So what steps will be taken to ensure our students will continue to benefit from this model? Attendance is taken every hour with a follow-up phone call made when the student is counted absent. More communication with students and families on how Summit works and how to navigate and understand the platform and how to understand grading. Just communicating general information about Summit, which I think is something we have not done a very good job of. And then we had a teacher who volunteered to actually lead a Summit Learning parent information session. So what is the estimated time to see improvements? I would say initial improvements will be at the end of this first semester, with full results at the end of the school year. Parents and students can also see results in the Summit platform and in Infinite Campus grades. And we can always provide the Board of Education with data to show growth. So what steps will be taken to obtain buy-in from parents? We need to show them the why. We also need to share student successes and the positives. We also need to share, we've been working on putting together an information packet that explains Summit and how it works. And then put together videos about the Summit platform, what it is, and how to use it. And finally, build positive collaborative relationships with our families and our students. So what changes have already been made to help address student needs? We kind of talked about that earlier. So next question is, how many times are students allowed to take a power focus area assessment without passing before a teacher will intervene? So the answer to that is actually twice. And then the student works with the teacher to address the deficiency. And then there are a variety of strategies that are used at that point. It could be just meeting with the teacher to talk about what the student is having trouble with. It could be that the student needs to work on taking some more detailed notes. It could be that the student participates in a workshop. Or it could be that they review the assessment with the teacher and go over what they missed on their content assessment. So the Summit is an ongoing process throughout the year. How are grades being determined each quarter? So the quarter grade is basically a progress report. It shows the student's Summit grade at that specific point in time. For math, there was a question about their test, focus area, and final product being the only opportunities for a grade. But that does offer 3 different data points to show a student's mastery of the content. So how are students being worked with when they need help, such as not passing tests or checkpoints? Again, it's the same thing that I think I talked about earlier. A variety of strategies, including having students take more detailed notes, meeting with the teacher, and I know part of our process is that the student does need to meet with the teacher to determine next steps. Workshops, reviewing assessment with the teacher. So what are we using to determine if Summit is successful for students? Currently, it looks like we are looking at traditional grading, updates, and work completion. There are other measures of success, however, including developing critical thinking and problem-solving skills, and teaching students to be independent learners, which is not something that is necessarily measured on a report card. Since we haven't had parent-teacher conferences, are teachers reaching out to parents to communicate about student performance and engagement? And if so, how and when? And I would say yes, teachers are definitely reaching out to parents. I would say that there is more communication happening this year than there has ever been in the past. Teachers are using email, phone calls, and sometimes Google Meet to communicate. They are contacting families during their plan time, before school, after school, and in the evenings. So how is student growth being measured and tracked? We can see student growth in the data dashboard in the Summit platform. And do core subject classes provide direct teacher instruction when students are learning remotely, or are students simply directed to view their resources, take notes, and follow up with their teacher only if they have questions afterward? The answer is yes, they do provide direct instruction, and they have created instruction videos and posted them in Canvas, which also has the same information as what they are learning in class. Students may also now join a live class session via Google Meet each hour of the day. Teachers also have always had a remote learning hour for students to log on and ask questions if they need to. Students should also use all of the resources in Summit, take notes, and complete the checkpoints that are within each project. So what major issues do we see as the priority to address? And I would say student work completion. We need to find ways to motivate students to complete work when they are learning at home. We also need to improve our communication with families about student progress and about Summit learning in general. And we need to balance student and teacher physical and mental health with academic progress during a pandemic. So let's work together. We need to work on this systematically. Chisholm and Santa Fe both use the Summit Learning platform. We have 4 administrators between us, 2 buildings, and a district office who are committed to working together to help our students succeed. We also have teachers that are very passionate about helping our students. We must work together to support our school. This is about our community rallying around Chisholm Middle School, our students, our families, and our staff to take on a challenge and grow from it. Let's set a positive example for recognizing a challenge, addressing the issue, and collaborating together to make improvements. Please give us a chance to address these concerns and make changes. Any questions?
Anybody have a question?
I was gonna wait. Okay, so if you first ask the same question, no, if you guys haven't asked first, because I might have the same one, so feel free to go ahead.
I've got a quick one. Is there any chance that Chisholm could do a 4x4 schedule in the second semester, like the high school? Would that be possible at all?
We would need more resources to be able to do that. We only have 1 counselor, and they would have to change 479 student schedules. And I just don't know about students missing out on math for 9 weeks or social studies for 9 weeks at the middle school level. I think it's good for them to have that instruction as much as they can, 5 days a week for a whole semester. I could be wrong.
I think it makes managing online learning a lot easier, I think, to have less check-ins and just less content to track where you're at. But I understand the challenge of it, maybe lacking resources to get that done, but I've got 2 kids at Chisholm and 1 at the high school and kind of have an idea how that's working out for them.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we made the elective enrichment only, is so that students could focus on the core academic classes. And those students who are doing okay with their core academic classes, they can still do their elective classes too. And those who can't, they're not penalized for it.
It's enrichment only when they're remote.
Correct.
When they're in person, it's required, but only when they're remote, so they can focus on those core academics, correct?
That's correct.
So I have a question. There's some discrepancies from what I'm hearing and what I heard here on several different points, but one of the main ones I think that stands out to me was some of our kiddos retaking certain pieces, and I've heard that from several parents on Facebook Messenger, emails, a couple of phone calls that I had, that people that I connected to through those mediums, just to hear and listen and try to understand what's going on for this purpose. And it sounds very similar, and I think somebody said it took something like 10 times at one point. And so we said that it's happening twice. Is there a gap somewhere in communication where we're having families say it's happening 10 times and we're supposed to be doing it twice? And then what are the action steps we take? Can we see what's going on some kind of a database?
We can. That's one of the advantages of Summit, is you can see exactly when the student took assessment and what they missed and all that kind of stuff. So we did have at the beginning, because our mentoring is spread across the entire building, so there are a number of teachers that have access that are not core teachers. And so in the beginning, we had some instances where teachers were approving content assessments without realizing that that was happening. So a student would request it, and it would sometimes be approved by like a non-core content teacher, just not realizing what they were doing for sure, and so then the student would take it without going through the correct protocols. But we have since fixed that, as far as I know. But that, we didn't realize that that was occurring until, about the first or second week of October. So I know that was the reason for at least one student who had taken it like 6 times. And it was because that they were just getting, they requested it and then somebody was just kind of blindly approving it.
To be clear, Joey, the kids are not supposed to be taking the content assessment unless they pass the diagnostic, correct?
Correct.
Correct. And then if they can take, if they fail the content assessment the first time, what happens? What's the protocol in your building?
So they can take it twice. After the second time, if they have not passed the content assessment, that is when they need to meet with the teacher to determine next steps. And then those next steps can be a variety of different strategies.
So then who generates that meeting with the student? Is that the student going to the teacher or the teacher reaching out to the student saying, hey, I noticed you've taken this X amount of times, let's meet and talk about it, or is that all on the student to do?
I think it's, well, the student would request it, and if the teacher sees that they've had it twice, then it's kind of a little bit of both. The student who wants to take the content assessment would approach the teacher, but if the teacher sees also that they have taken it twice and not passed it, they will work to meet with the student as well.
And some of my other questions were, we were talking about the data. Is that something that has always been used, or is that something new to the building?
We've always had access to it, but because last year was our first year rolling out Summit building-wide, we were still kind of learning the platform, and we were not very strong on using the data to guide exactly what we were doing.
Okay.
And that's something that, going into this year, I really wanted to work on, but then with all the COVID procedures and things, that didn't take a front seat for the first 9 weeks. But it's something we're trying to work on.
Okay, and is that the same with the workshops? I'm trying to remember
Yes,
if we did
that would be
workshops last
exactly
year.
the same thing with the workshops.
So those are new things for you guys to be looking at.
Yes, and we tried workshops last year, but we didn't do it with very strong efficacy, and I would say that's gonna be a big focus moving forward.
Okay. And then talk to me about mentoring, the whole mentoring part of this.
So every student has a teacher mentor, and they meet with that teacher once per week. The Summit recommends about 10 minutes or so, but then they go over checking with the student on how their week's going. They try to see how they're doing as far as their progress in their classes, but sometimes it's also a good socially emotional support time for students. But the mentor works with the student on setting goals for the week and trying to follow up the following week with the student on how the past week is going.
And that's for every student?
Yes.
What if that's not happening for every kid? I mean, how do you know?
Yeah, how do you know if it's happening?
So it's
It
in
didn't
the
happen with
Summit.
my student last year, that's why I'm asking.
It's in the Summit platform, so when you meet with a student and, for your mentoring session, there's a specific mentoring section in Summit, and you, actually hit start, and it'll guide you through, in fact, like, questions that you can ask the student as you're going through your mentor meeting with the student.
Okay.
So then Summit tracks that.
Well, my concern with the whole mentoring thing is that the teachers are busy planning, and now this year they're really busy with COVID and the learning modes. How are they gonna keep up with mentoring once a week?
That's scheduled into our SDL time, the student directed learning time, which is 69 minutes every day. And so that time is used for scheduling their mentor students, which they all have assigned to that SDL class. That is also when they're supposed to do workshops. And in that case, we do have limited time, which is part of the reason why we have the workshop Wednesday now, so that we can have one day really focused on workshops.
Well, and I don't want it for the kid, well, I'm thinking about the kids that are doing well and missing out on that mentoring time, because they need to have that as well. And in the past, I know that hasn't been a weekly thing for some students.
Yeah,
And now we're gonna be in remote, so how are all these things being put in place gonna be monitored and make sure that we're helping these students, because your data is very shocking.
well, I'd say the mentoring piece is one of the stronger pieces. The challenge is trying to connect with students who are at home, and you try to connect with them, via Google Meet, and then they log off the computer, and then it's really hard to connect with them. So that's one challenge. But I think the mentoring piece is one of the most important parts, especially this year, but any year. And so, it's in Summit, there's the mentoring section, and so as long as teachers are meeting with their students that they're assigned to, and as long as they're clicking the start button and going through those questions, Summit tracks that, and they track how long the session was, and so we can see when they've met.
And is that a new process that we've learned as we're?
That was
couple years
part of
down the
it,
road?
that was part of it last year also.
Okay. So how, as administrators, do you guys know that these mentoring meetings are happening?
We can see it in Summit, we can see it in the Summit data.
So you guys will be tracking
Yeah.
that?
And we have been tracking it, because when we meet with our Summit support coach, we look at different data points, and mentoring is one of them.
Okay. Again, I'm concerned that we just voted to go in remote, and that these are all lives for these kids. I just hope that we can all work together and reach out to these kids, because it's gonna be really tough
It is.
and remote.
It is, and it's really hard to balance the health and safety of everyone in the community, along with helping to make everybody, all the students make the correct academic progress that they need to.
Well,
agree.
and I know some of these kids are so frustrated that they're just throwing their hands up, and I wanna fix that. I wanna make it
Yeah.
so that they wanna sign on and not be so frustrated that they're like, just forget it.
Right, and I do not want students to be frustrated. I mean, I took this job
I know
to
you
help.
don't, I know you don't, I know none of the teachers do, but, and I
Yeah.
know it's a working process, but I just wanna make it clear that it's very concerning to be in full remote and try to get back on track with the way this should be ran.
Yeah.
Cause people are very frustrated with it, families, parents,
Mhm.
students. So I just wanna make it clear that the expectation needs to be, when we're in remote, we have got to work really, really hard with those students.
Yeah.
I wanted to follow on to a couple things that I heard that just caused concern for me again, and some of the things I've heard from families that, have messaged me and that I've listened to on the phone talk, as they're giving me their testimony and what their kids' experience feels like to them and what they're seeing, trying to work alongside them. And then there was one thing that you said that really rang to me, it's like, and it's not personal, it's just red flag, right? Sometimes it's the parents and sometimes it's the kids and sometimes it's the teacher. And I've heard this from many people, and I have a son, who I'm right there and I tell him to do something right there and he doesn't do it, And so, where is that accountability and who's overseeing that to make sure these touches are getting done? And I know there's a lot going on, but is there a way to set up systems where there's accountability people in place so we're not dropping some of these balls? It seems like they're being dropped, and I know there's a lot going on, but we have to try to structure that differently in my mind. If I'm leaving that to chance, it's not gonna happen.
Are you talking about when students are at home learning?
When they're contacting, you said that there's a point where a student can contact.
For the content assessments.
Yeah,
Okay.
or the teacher can contact, and there's not really, it didn't sound like to me there was this is how it works, because if we don't give people how it works, probably not gonna happen.
Yeah.
At least in my experience, and I could be wrong.
Well, I would say if the student does not follow up with the teacher, and the teacher sees that they have requested, the teacher contacts the student then,
And that is happening.
as far as I know. But I
And
can't say
that's
it's
the stuff I
100%.
wanna make sure we nail. Like,
Yeah.
I gotta tell a parent that I know that that's happening for these reasons, and this is how we're checking on that. Because if not, they're gonna,
Yeah, cause we've heard some cases where when a student has requested to take it, is it a content
Content assessment.
assessment, that it's been over a day before they've gotten approval to take that. So is that really happening? What's that process? Does it take a day to get approval?
It doesn't always take a day. What happens is the student requests the content assessment, and then the teacher approves it, and then the student has a certain window after that approval to take the content assessment. And in some cases, the student has missed that window, because the teacher might be teaching class, and so they don't see it initially. So then the student is maybe sitting there waiting to take the content assessment, but because the teacher is teaching class, they have not approved that content assessment. So the student might be waiting for 20 minutes, they move on to something else, the teacher approves it, and then the student missed the window because they moved on to something else.
So So how do we correct that?
That's a great question. And I don't know if I have the answer right now, but yeah.
I can address it. A teacher over at Chisholm, 8th grade science, Alex Peterson. So one way we address it is we use GoGuardian a lot of times. This is a direct way to communicate with our students while they're online. And we do this by, you can call in individual students, or you can call a class, just like a Google Meet. But they also have a chat. So we can message students and say, hey, I saw your request, but it's the third time, you need to join my Google Meet in order to go through the test with us, and so we can kind of walk you through some of those things. So that's one way we can communicate with them, but a lot of, like early on, that was really difficult. We didn't really have all, like Google Guardian is a completely new thing for us. So we had to learn a new way to use that, and so little by little, like every meeting we get together, which we don't every day, our teachers don't get a chance to do that every day. We talk about what's the new technology that you kind of learn. So that's one thing that we're learning new things every day about it, and we're getting more comfortable with it. So we do that. In the beginning, it was all through Google Forms, and those Google Forms that was a mess. Okay, that was really hard to track because it's hard to keep like it up to date, and students had to go through 3 or 4 steps just to take a test, and that was really hard for us to really track. And that's why you have a day or 2 or 3 before you could actually take the test. So we had to really streamline that a lot faster. And so now we set up a Google Meet. They have to join if they want to take a test in school, they show up to our classroom, and they can take it with us then. And we walk them through it, or we answer questions, or we reword questions, so that they're a little different wording, but still the same question. Then the other way, if they're at home, or if they're unable to come to our classroom for whatever reason, they have to join our Google Meet on the 3rd time or more, because sometimes they don't pass it that time either. And then they come back the 4th time, and we can walk them through it a lot more. And then at that time, we also give them the opportunity to do a little workshop with us. So that's a long answer for that, but all of it has been streamlined a lot more.
I think we just need to make sure that we're communicating that to parents regularly, because maybe their students not understanding how to do that maybe, because I've heard it on more than one occasion that they're requesting to take, because they're trying to plan ahead, because they might be gone or something, and they're still having to, it's still no contact. So that concerns me, but I mean, I'm here to help you guys, if you need it. It's gonna be very tough with remote.
Other questions?
Yes, I was waiting. Okay, our 7th grade students now, unless they've transferred in from a different district, this is their 3rd year at Summit. So parents of 7th and then 8th graders, some 8th graders, have had Summit for multiple years now. So this isn't completely new to them, and I think we all will acknowledge that sometimes we can put information out 100 times and it won't reach everyone. It never will reach everyone, unfortunately. So I think it's a little bit different now that we're on our 3rd year of this for many of these Chisholm students, that it's not necessarily a new concept to families what Summit is. There's always new things to learn, how to access different things. I learn new things all the time as well. And before I get to some of my other questions, I noticed that a lot of the slideshow discussed issues based on COVID, which they are 1,000% valid reasons. COVID has thrown all of us for a loop. But COVID is putting stress on all staff in every building, in every grade level, and different grade levels have unique struggles. The elementary deals with things that you guys don't, and vice versa. So I understand that COVID is a huge issue that we're trying to navigate through. A lot of these issues have been brought up for a number of years in this district, and once again, if you were not the admin, then you get to inherit a lot of things when you take over a building, so I don't want this to seem like it's directed at you. It's not, because you and Fred, when you guys come in new, you get to walk into a mess and a pandemic, so it's been a rough year for you guys, so thank you for all you're doing. Can you talk to me a little bit about these workshop Wednesdays? I have a few notes here about those. So, you said this just recently started?
Yes,
Okay,
that was part of our adjustments. that we
Okay,
did
in the last
second quarter.
week or two, I lose track of the
1
weeks.
week so far.
Okay, okay,
You had one workshop Wednesday, right?
Right.
Yep.
okay. And for students who are on track in those classes, during the workshop Wednesday, what does that look like for those students?
If they're on track, then they're encouraged to work on their elective classes. And if they want to go ahead and work on additional work in their core classes, they are allowed to do that. Otherwise, they can work on their elective material.
So if they're completely caught up, they've done their electives, workshop Wednesday is hopefully reading a book, doing other productive educational things.
Right.
But on the students for that. I know we talk a lot about kids who are struggling, and I do have a few questions there, but also we talk about it being personalized for individual students, which this year is just a heck of a year to work on all these things. What about students who are caught up and are ready to move ahead, but maybe aren't allowed to move quite as quickly as they would like to?
Then they have the challenge focus areas that students can work on, which are just deeper dives into the content. And so they're allowed to do that. If they are completely caught up in everything, then that would have to be something where if they've even done the challenge, which I don't think we have anybody in that category, then we would probably have to find some additional material. But there's a balancing act, because I know this was a question last year of what if a student completely finishes all of their science material by the semester? But a lot of times if they do that, they haven't worked on their language arts at all because they like science better. So it's a matter of pacing them, but at the same time letting them work at their own speed, but balancing that and making sure that they're doing stuff in all of the rest of their classes. So if we have a student who has done that, then they're more than likely already part of the ELP program, and if they're not, then we would probably find some way to give them additional material if they've already done the challenge focus areas and every other piece of material that they have to work on.
Now with these additional focus areas, I hope I'm using the right language. I see it on the screen in my mind, the additionals. Those are not quote unquote taught by the teacher. That is for students to kind of go follow the notes and.
The challenge focus area would be for the student to work on.
Okay.
On their own.
And what if they're to that point and they're getting stuck, but the rest of the class isn't working on that area, they've tried, they're stuck, then what do we do with those kids?
Then the teacher would, if it's a student in their class and they're working on a challenge focus area and the student has questions, I would assume the teacher would still be able to help the student with that as well.
Since there haven't been any parent-teacher conferences, I know there's been a lot of communication about things. I get the emails, the phone calls, so yes, you guys are pushing out school-wide communication. Since we haven't had conferences, are teachers reaching out to all parents? Are they reaching out to parents whose kids are under a certain threshold? How is that working?
I would say it's the ones that they haven't heard from the most. Not being a teacher myself, I know from the office, we created a list of students who were struggling with attendance and grades and created kind of a remote learning plan for those students. And so I would assume the teachers are doing the same thing. I see a shaking of the head, yes. But not necessarily reaching out to every single student that they have. Because
Just if
there's
they're
just not enough time to do
below
that.
level. This wouldn't matter, I guess, during remote time, but when we're in hybrid, when there is a sub in for a teacher, and we have students that are at home in hybrid, and there's a substitute, is there always a Google Meet set up? If not, who do students contact during that time?
It depends on the situation. So if a staff member is sick, or if they are out for some other reason, like attending a funeral, and they're not available to teach from home, then we have asked them to put on their Canvas page that they are not available for the Google Meet time, and that the students should check in with their other teachers.
So if we have a student who has a math question, and they have a day or two where there's no Google Meet time, none of that, the students are just gonna wait a few more days?
Well, in some circumstances, the student can ask the other math teacher. There's also usually instructional videos on Canvas that students can refer to, so that they can get information that they need. But I think if we were in a normal circumstance, if they had a sub for a day and they had a question and the sub was not able to answer their question, it would be a similar kind of situation. They would have to wait until the teacher returns.
But they would be in a classroom with peers at that time if we were in a normal situation. So we're at home, typically if there's an issue, hopefully they would have utilized all of their resources, so it might not be a matter of going back and watching more videos. They've probably done that, and then they're stuck and needing teacher help.
Yeah.
Do parents know when interventions are taking place with their students?
As far as what kind of interventions would you be talking about?
Yeah, I forget you use that word in a lot of ways in your building. If we have kiddos who are falling behind, needing to get on the workshop Wednesdays, needing to have time with teachers, those small meetings, do parents know that's happening if their student doesn't come back and say, oh, I've been receiving some additional help?
I feel like that's just built into our system, that we just automatically help students, so we don't necessarily communicate every single intervention, but I do know that teachers communicate with parents about workshops, or at least with the students about, you need to be attending this workshop, so you can get the help that you need. But as far as interventions, that's part of what we do day in and day out. So we wouldn't necessarily communicate every single intervention or strategy that we do with parents each time.
And I can understand that would be a full-time job in and of itself, but I know a number of parents who are actively engaged with their kiddos, and they're working with that, and they're at a loss, their students are at a loss. I think everybody just doesn't know what to do from that point on.
One thing, Mallory, that not to interrupt too much, but just a little bit, one of the things that we've got to do a better job of is educating parents how they can use the platform to ask the right questions so that they know what's taking place. Like when I sit down with the parent to look at the Summit Learning platform, and they're having questions based upon what's going on in the building, I'll show them how to like go into the content assessments, go to where the objectives are. If their kids are struggling, to look at which objectives they're struggling with. And then they can ask those questions as it relates to that, because parents don't know what objectives are necessarily, okay? They don't understand like how the content assessment pieces or the power focus areas work like within the grading part. It's only about 30% of the grade when you look at the power focus areas, the content assessment, and the additional focus areas. Then the rest of the grade is really the projects. And so we've got to do a lot better job, in my opinion, of teaching parents how to help hold us accountable for when we're not really probably doing as good of a job as we should be when kids are struggling with content assessments and other things. Because I'll just tell a story. In my previous district, I had a principal tell me when we were talking about when we first got going with Summit, I actually had a parent say my kid took a content assessment 5 times, and my principal used some salty language and said that's not correct. And of course I didn't know any better, so I went into the platform and I'd seen that the kid took the content assessment 3 times, but they took the diagnostic twice. That parent doesn't know the difference between the diagnostic and the content assessment. Why should they? Okay? So in that parent's mind, they took that test 5 darn times, because when they see a test, that's all they see. And what we've got to do is a lot better job, in my opinion, of showing parents how to get them that platform, how to look at that stuff where they can target and help their children. And if they can't help it, they can tell their kids what to ask the teacher. If they don't feel comfortable asking that teacher, then the parent can approach the teacher with, these are the things I know my kid's struggling with, I don't know how to help them, you know, what are you gonna do? What we hope happens is that these workshops get organized to the point to where we're looking at the data in advance of the kids getting to the point to where they're struggling and taking that content assessment so much. And I'm not trying to say anything negative, but I don't think that we've done a great job of really organizing those workshops really around that data. And part of that is because of all of the other things that are going on right now in their lives. But I know teachers, that's where they want to get, is to actually use that data to create those workshops that are meaningful based upon the student objectives where there are deficiencies. Never before have you ever, as a teacher, really had that power to do that. But it's a matter of setting up like systems of accountability and support that we can look at that data, because I can, as the soup, go in there and look at that, and Joey can as a principal, whereas before, all they could look at was a grade book. And you get nothing out of a grade book but a grade. Here, you can actually see the performance level of the kid, the number of times they took the assessment, and what objectives they were struggling at. And that's to me where instruction could be so targeted now, where it never could be before. But our teachers, they have to have the time to learn how to do that well. And right now, I just think it's just been really crazy. And I'm not trying to make excuses for them, but I just think that they've got a lot to overcome as it relates to this. Summit does a nice job of coaching principals and stuff too, and that's one of the things that we got after the Christmas holiday. They're gonna do some more work with them about targeting the data and exactly how to find it and how to help teachers, you know, set up some of those workshops and stuff on another level.
I know we're bringing a lot of things up and asking a lot, parents are asking a lot. It seems like a lot, and I know there's so much on teachers already. I hate to think of one more thing, because there's not enough time in the day as it is, so I struggle with that. But essentially, we all want our kids to be educated, and educated very well. And that doesn't dismiss any of the other issues that we're dealing with, because this is not a normal year where you guys can get in and make changes, because you have so much else to navigate. One other point, you showed the graph or the numbers with grades and different things like that. When did staff, whoever that may be, notice that high number and percentage of DNF grades?
We could see about, halfway or 3/4 of the way through the 9 weeks that students were struggling, and I think I had sent out a message about projects are coming due. Please encourage your students to work on their project and get it completed. And I think we kind of just hoped that that final push would help get students to complete their projects. But sometimes until you actually see that letter grade, because that's what people know and are used to, it doesn't feel like it's really happening, or that anything is going to happen if I don't finish my project. So then when the project comes due and it hasn't been completed, and then we discover, oh, that translates into a poor grade, then it kind of kicks people into gear to get back and get those things completed.
But from a staff standpoint, you guys saw midway through the 9 weeks that there were issues?
I think what we saw was that we had projects coming due, and that there were a large number of students that were not completing it at the pace that they probably should to get it done on time.
Okay.
But again, we tried to reach out, we tried to communicate that to parents and students, but we were also still working with the asynchronous instruction. We didn't have our check-in every hour set in place, so there weren't all those kind of extra steps to help hold students accountable like we have now, to where students were able to connect with the teacher easily every single day to really encourage them to get their work done.
and it's difficult when those projects carry so much weight because one project can shift your grades so dramatically, so quickly. So now that you guys have given us those numbers and you're aware of those numbers, who is it that is responsible for kind of monitoring that and seeing if kids are kind of off track? We have a high percentage of D's and F's right now. I don't want to say failing grades because their grades aren't complete until the end of the year, but as of right now, we have a number of those grades. Is that individual teachers with their students in that class? Is that a building thing that's being monitored?
I mean, as far as being the building administrator, I would definitely be responsible for monitoring that data. Same thing with our assistant principal, Mr. Newlake, we would monitor that. And teachers being in the classroom would also be monitoring how their students are doing. So it's a building-wide teamwork, collaborative effort, monitoring what our students are doing and then responding accordingly.
And with you mentioned a number of changes that have happened. I mean, just in the last week, it's too early to see a number of those changes through. We've seen some positive changes, so I appreciate the things that you've already implemented, like the following the bell schedule, things like that. And shout out to Mrs. Tate for taking on a student that wasn't hers and answering a math question one day. I greatly appreciate that. It was a rough day in our house, so thank you. I do appreciate it. There are some benefits to technology. So I appreciate the work that you guys are doing, and I don't want our questions and concerns to come across as criticism. I know our staff is working so incredibly hard. I know our staff wants students to succeed. That's what we all want. Most of us have kids in our district, and we trust our staff with our kids. They're our most precious things in life, so we appreciate you. I'm excited to see changes. I think there's a lot of work to do, but it's not this year, it's not you, it's just kind of a collection of things. So thank you for answering all of my questions. I'm sure I'll email you with more.
Okay.
Joey, I have just a couple of little ones. This one, I've learned that education is probably the only organization that uses more special terms and acronyms than the military. And so I think I understand it, but what is asynchronous, the synchronous and asynchronous platforms that you're talking about? I think I got it, but I'm not sure.
I don't know either, that's a good question. No, I'm just kidding.
I want his pay doc.
You got read real quick, dude.
Am I allowed to throw things?
Yes, you can. Make sure they're sharp if you're gonna throw them.
He'll serve an hour of detention. I'm sorry, I don't know why I did that, but anyway. Asynchronous.
I got a note to take care.
Obviously, your kids did not take orchestra.
No, not a musical bone in the body.
We can teach you. We have teachers for that. Asynchronous instruction would be where instructional videos and teaching is offered for students on a schedule that fits them. So that would be if they are not able to get the lesson during the day because of outside circumstances, whether they're helping a sibling or having to, if it's at the high school level, having to work or whatever the circumstance is, they have access to those instructional videos and assignments outside of the school day. So in the evening or on the weekend, that would be asynchronous. Synchronous would be that they are on the exact same schedule as those students who would attend school every single day, every single hour, like a normal bell schedule, except they are at home doing that. So they are on the same synchronized schedule as those students who are attending on-site during the day.
All right, and then this one is, I see Mrs. Waltrip back there, so I went up to her, and this is a softball. I'm just wondering, are the numbers that they're seeing at Chisholm, are you seeing the same type of like D's and F's, or is it better, or?
We have Ds and Fs as well, and I'm gonna be honest, I can't compare to last year's necessarily, but it's not as high, the numbers, but I think there's some, benefits to the four of us working together to try to also make it a system where we're implementing consistency. So again, for the students who are in 7th or 8th grade at Chisholm, and this is their potentially 3rd year with it, where we do things different too. So, I think this gives us an opportunity to come up with that systematic approach, and the four of us are new, so that also adds to that. But we do have some Ds and Fs. Ours is also tied to pacing. Some of our classes with their curriculum and their pacing, so like the speed in which we go through and do stuff. The projects didn't come due until right close to the 9-week time. And it is a big portion of their grade. So that's something that we've targeted for working towards next year as as we go through this year too, that setting that pacing scale to work at a better rate, quicker.
That is all I have. Anybody else?
Yeah, just thinking of a couple. Last year, when we were trying to learn more about, or when I was trying to learn more about Summit, and maybe why it wasn't going well for some folks, talked a lot about there's a big number of turnover at Santa Fe and Chisholm. It was like over 30% of Santa Fe's teachers last year were new, and I think it was even higher than that at Chisholm. Is that part of what we're dealing with this year too? I mean, are a lot of our teachers new to Summit this year?
This year, not as much. We didn't have quite as much we didn't have nearly as much turnover from last year to this year. So I think it's just that we haven't had a full year to truly learn and implement Summit at the building-wide level. So it's just, my thinking is Rome didn't get built in a day, and we're not gonna be able to do Summit perfectly in 3/4 of a year or 9 weeks in a pandemic. But we certainly, I think we have the pieces in place to make this really strong. We just need the opportunity to do that.
Well, I appreciate you guys, I mean, at least identifying that there's definitely, room for improvement with just looking at grades and incompletes, I mean, you recognize the red flag, you shared that data with us, and yeah, absolutely, this group wants to know that, we're trying to make improvements on that data, and do better. At the same time though, like we know, I mean, we just started our second 9 weeks pretty much, so, I don't wanna bash the curriculum, I think any curriculum, it probably takes a little bit to get, really into it. When I tried to sub, you show up one day and try and teach what's in the books, it's kind of hard to do that, but if you did it for a couple of years in a row, you probably would get better, and then the third year you'd probably get better. But anyway, it's good to know that we have a data set, and we'll be monitoring that, hoping for improvement. I had another question real quick about, talk about checking in on the mental health of their students, and I know with the mentoring, that was 1 day a week that we were asking students, like, how did your week go, how are you feeling? But I know with our younger students, I think, when they were doing online stuff, it was almost like daily, they could put something up that said, this is how I feel right now, and I wonder if that wouldn't be good, or maybe it's already happening. Could you tell me how that could happen daily for maybe 5th, 6th, and 7th and 8th, to make sure that there's not kids that are just really in a bad situation and we're totally missing it?
Yeah, and if you have, like, students are checking in on Google Meet and their camera is on, you can kind of get a sense that way as far as how that is. And I know we have, like, our social workers and our school counselors who are also available to help students and connect. And I know that they work with a number of students who do need some additional social emotional help. And so we're using those resources as well.
It's not necessarily like a quick, as you get started for the day. I mean, for elementary, I think don't they hit like a happy face or an emoji or something like that and say where they're at, how they're feeling? It's not really, that doesn't really have, 5, 6 has that?
We have a check-in system, which I can easily share with Joey and Chad. It's not part of the summit curriculum. It's something that we've done with zones of regulation, which the elementary kids are used to, so it's just, we have done it virtually. They would do it in electronically. Previous years, they've done it with like jars, or you've got kids that they had jars and things that they did. It's just a checking and seeing how they're coming to you that day and how they're feeling. So that way, if we need to give them additional help, we can. But I can definitely share that.
Might be something to look into, because there might be some kids that aren't being seen, that something maybe is developing. So that would be a way for them to ask for help.
My last question that I have is, do you think you have everything you need to move it forward? Do you have all the support you need in place? Do you feel like you've got that structure in place?
I think I have a lot of learning to do. And so, if I have the time, I know I have the support, and we have the teachers in place who are passionate about this. We always need more support. We always need additional resources, for sure. But I think we have the pieces in place to make it successful.
Well, and it sounds like maybe there were some things that we weren't aware of in this summit platform, and so now maybe we have the tools and the knowledge to use those resources for some of the frustrations that we're feeling across the board.
And I would say I've learned a lot in just the past 2 weeks about Summit, trying to prepare for this as well. So it's one of those things that takes some time, and it's even more challenging in the midst of a pandemic, but we know what we need to do, and we're going to try to do that.
I just want to piggyback on what Luke said. Thank you for the presentation and giving some of those numbers, which aren't ideal. Nobody wants to see those numbers, but I think this group would rather just know that, and I appreciate you acknowledging, hey, we have some work to do, and it's not just from this year. So I appreciate that, because I'd rather know, hey, we've got some areas that we're looking into, show us numbers, that's fantastic. I don't remember, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember seeing a public presentation on some of the numbers coming from Summit and what that looks like for our students and performance and things like that. So I appreciate seeing that tonight. I know it's not easy to say, yeah, we've identified some issues, but as a board member and a parent, I would rather hear that every day than say everything's golden. So thank you. I really, really appreciate you coming here for that.
You're welcome. And I was wondering if, as I said here, maybe if we could be updated at the semester on where we're at, and does everybody want that? Would that be okay from both schools? I think it would be helpful to kind of, just like what we're doing here, snapshot. Let us know the problems, let us know the goods, let us know your plan of action to correcting things, and this was very helpful, Joey. Very, very helpful. And we appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, and thank you for your help and your support in the class.
Thank you, Joey.
Thank you.
Appreciate what you guys are doing.
Thank you to all of you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is my, if you can see my computer, my agenda went to like micro font, so I can't, there's no way I can read it, so.
Building reports.
Building reports, and then, board comments, okay. Andy, I'll start with you. Nothing? Okay, Luke?
Nope.
Angie?
Oh, I just want to say, I know a lot of people, were hoping that we would move into a red mode, of instruction through Christmas, that remote in all levels. I totally understand the fear, the anxiousness that a lot of people in our community are feeling, a lot of our teachers are feeling. I just want to say, I didn't get a chance to say this earlier, the mode that we selected for tonight, the orange, is in line with the criteria that we established the beginning of the semester. It's not a modified orange, it's straight up orange. and all of the numbers kind of fall in line with us selecting that criteria. So I'm really happy that we stuck with that, and I think this is just another reminder that we all have to do our part in this community to slow the spread, so we can come back in January.
I just wanna thank staff again, for all the hard work every day and night and weekends. Like Joey mentioned, teachers at Chisholm, and I know it's happening at every building, are pivoting and changing and adapting and moving, daily to address issues and meet student needs. And, I know there's a lot out there on social media and a lot of concerns, but I just want staff to know that we see all the positives. We understand the work that's happening and all the time and effort you're putting in. I'm just extremely grateful for that, so I appreciate everything that our staff is doing across the board.
I just wanted to check with Joni, because I was gonna flog if you didn't do this. Did everybody send in their names for the committee?
And I provided information to them.
And you got that to Luke and Andy? Thank you very much. Thank you for everybody for doing that. Just an update, I met with Jack and Joanne Thaw, sat down with them for about an hour and a half. And my background with Jack has gone back almost 25 years, and I knew a lot more about him and his wrestling, but after meeting with them, Joanne truly is just a pioneer and a leader for girls athletics, and we couldn't have made a better choice than to honor this family. So kudos to you guys, and I'll continue to work on that. And then I got to tour the schools on Veterans Day, which was a lot of fun, and it was just really good. It was neat to see our teachers and our staff are working their tails off, and they're doing great things and a great job, so I appreciate it greatly. So with that, I'm done. I'll entertain a motion.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? 7-0. Thank you, everybody.